There are moments in life when you feel like something inside you has shattered. A word, a look, a silence. That's all it takes. And suddenly, you're back in that place. The old wound, the one you thought had healed long ago, starts bleeding again. We try to ignore it. We distract ourselves, work harder, laugh louder, move faster. But it follows us, because no matter how much you run, the one thing you can't escape is yourself. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. And awakening hurts. But it's also the beginning of freedom. You've spent years trying to protect yourself from being hurt again. You became strong, you built walls, you told yourself you don't need anyone. You confused detachment with healing. You thought that shutting down your feelings would make you powerful. But real strength is not found in numbness. It is found in being able to feel, without being destroyed by what you feel. You were not born afraid. You learned fear. You were not born ashamed. You learned shame. You were not born doubting yourself. The world taught you that. But here's what the world couldn't take from you: the ability to choose again, to choose to go within, to sit with the pain, to not run from it, but to listen. And when you do, something shifts. Your pain stops being your enemy. It becomes your teacher. You see, true power doesn't come from appearing invincible. It doesn't lie in controlling what others say or do. It lies in being able to remain centered, even when the world seems to fall apart around you. You might have spent years trying to become someone who doesn't get affected. But in that process, maybe you lost touch with what you actually feel. Maybe you forgot that not feeling isn't the same as not hurting. Suppressed emotion doesn't disappear. It becomes illness, bitterness, coldness. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is not just a beautiful phrase to contemplate. It is a warning. Because every unhealed wound, every ignored emotion, every buried fear continues to shape your life silently, from the shadows. So, let's stop pretending. Stop pretending that betrayal doesn't hurt. Stop pretending that abandonment doesn't leave marks. Stop pretending that you're fine when you're actually falling apart. This isn't strength. This is survival. And you deserve more than survival. You deserve to be free. But what does freedom really mean? Does it mean not caring anymore? Walking away from everyone and everything? Cutting off all emotion? Number freedom means knowing that no one can use your pain against you, not because you've hidden it, but because you've accepted it. It means looking at your past, not with shame, but with clarity. It means seeing your wounds not as signs of weakness, but as the very places where your soul demanded to grow. When you integrate your darkness, when you look your fears in the eye and say, "You no longer control me," something remarkable happens. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop defending. You start understanding. You stop surviving. You start living. And from that place, no one, not your parents, not your ex, not your critics, not your fears, can truly hurt you anymore. So I invite you now to ask yourself, where in your life are you still giving others power over your peace? What pain are you still trying to outrun, rather than sit with and learn from? And most importantly, who could you become if you stopped hiding? If this message is touching something deep in you, it's not by chance. It's because you are ready. Ready to turn inward. Ready to listen. Ready to awaken. And if you're still here with me, type in the comments, "I am ready." Let's make it a movement of people who don't just want to appear strong, but actually become whole. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when the pain starts to feel familiar, not comforting, but less threatening. You're no longer flinching, you're observing. Something inside you begins to shift. Carl Jung spoke of this as holding the tension of the opposites, the ability to stand between light and shadow, between your desire to be whole and your impulse to escape. You begin to realize Healing doesn't mean the wound disappears. It means the wound no longer controls your life. The very thing that once broke you now teaches you who you truly are. Can you see it? The rejection that made you feel invisible. It taught you where you were abandoning yourself. The betrayal that shattered your trust. It forced you to rebuild your boundaries, stronger this time, more conscious. The loneliness that felt unbearable. It made you return to the only place that had answers, within. And here's the most powerful truth. You are not who you were when that pain entered your life. You have become someone who can hold it without being ruled by it. Most people will never sit long enough with themselves to see this. They'll numb it, run from it, blame others, but not you, because you've begun to realize the world is not responsible for your inner peace. No one can give you what you haven't claimed within. So here's the invitation. The next time pain knocks, don't slam the door. Open it. Look it in the eye and say, "What are you here to teach me?" And then listen. You'll be surprised, because within the pain, you'll find a guide, and within the silence, a voice you had forgotten, your own. There's a strange kind of strength that comes when you stop trying to prove anything to anyone. It's not loud. It doesn't demand recognition, but it's steady and unshakable. Jung once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing, which makes my life worth living." He wasn't speaking of isolation. He meant the kind of aloneness where you finally come home, to yourself. We live in a world that teaches you to perform strength, to be unaffected, unfazed, always fine. But real strength isn't the absence of feeling. It's your willingness to feel everything, and not run away. Have you noticed how silence makes people uncomfortable? Because in silence, the masks fall, the noise fades, and we're left with truth. And the truth is, many of the battles you fight aren't even yours. You've carried expectations that were never yours to hold. You've chased approval from people who never even saw the real you. You've armored yourself against wounds that belong to someone else. But now, you're learning to lay those weapons down. Because real power isn't in fighting harder. It's in choosing when not to fight. It's in the quiet moment where you see yourself, and you don't look away. Where you stop asking, "Am I enough for them?" and start asking, "Am I aligned with me?" And something beautiful happens. The more still you become, the more clearly you hear. Not the voices of fear, not the echoes of old stories, but the voice that was there before it all, yours. And that voice says, "You are already whole. You just forgot." They used to hurt you, with words, with silence, with expectations you could never meet. And you tried to fix it. You tried to be better. You tried to make them see you. But here's the truth Jung would want you to understand. What you resist persists, and what you chase owns you. They only had power because you gave them access to your peace, to your worth, to your story. But that was then. Now, you are learning to build something sacred inside, a space no one else can enter, a sanctuary where you meet yourself, not the version shaped by fear or shame, but the one born before the world taught you to doubt. This is not about cutting people off. It's about no longer cutting yourself into pieces to be accepted. Not everyone will understand your journey. They're not supposed to, because it's not theirs to walk. There's a power in becoming untouchable, not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown rooted. Your worth is no longer up for negotiation. Your peace is no longer a currency. And your past, it no longer dictates your path. And here's something powerful. You don't need to forgive and forget to heal. You only need to release yourself from the illusion that their approval means anything about your value. Let go of the version of you that kept apologizing for existing. Let go of the need to explain your healing. Let go of the habit of shrinking. You are not fragile. You are fire. You are not too much. You are more than enough. And now, they can no longer touch what lives inside you, because your power is no longer borrowed. It's built, rooted, yours. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that is where your true protection begins. not in walls built from bitterness, not in pretending nothing hurts, but in meeting the parts of yourself you've tried to bury, the anger, the fear, the grief, the need. See, what makes you untouchable isn't pretending to be invincible. It's the courage to look into your own darkness and not run away. You don't become strong by avoiding pain. You become strong by understanding what that pain came to teach you. Think of it. The person who hurt you most deeply. What did they awaken in you? Was it a voice that says, "I'm not worthy. I must not matter. I'll never be enough"? Those aren't your truths. They're echoes, shadows. And Jung's greatest insight: you don't destroy the shadow. You integrate it. You say, "I see you. I know why you're here." But you don't get to drive anymore. You are not your wounds. You are the one who survived them, the one who carries them wisely now. And so you begin to walk through the world differently, not guarded, but guided, not armored, but aware. Because when you've made peace with your shadow, nothing anyone says can weaponize it against you. There was a time when silence was survival. You stayed quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because speaking meant risk, rejection, shame, being misunderstood. So you held it in, your truth, your needs, your pain, and you got good at it. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You agreed when your soul whispered no. You stayed, even when it broke you. But here's the shift. You're not that powerless child anymore. You don't owe your silence to anyone. Now, silence is a choice, not a cage, not a shield, a boundary. You choose when to speak and when not to, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because power isn't loud. It's still. It's calm. It's the steady gaze that says, "I see everything. I just don't need to react." Carl Jung taught us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Now you see the patterns. Now you hear the voices that aren't yours. And most importantly, now you know, you can pause, breathe, and choose who you want to be, instead of playing out someone else's script. This is the beginning of freedom, when silence becomes sacred, not silencing. You've spent years hiding the broken parts, covering them with smiles, with achievements, with people who never really saw you, because somewhere along the way you were taught that being whole meant being flawless. But what if that's a lie? Carl Jung believed that true healing doesn't come from rejecting the wounded parts of ourselves, but from embracing them. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So look there, not away, at the part of you that still aches when you hear certain words, at the memory you try to forget, at the anger that flares up faster than it should. That's your signal. That's where the light wants to enter, not to destroy you, but to show you what's been waiting, what's been silenced, what's been asking for love, not shame. See, your strength was never in your perfection. It was in your courage to stay, to sit with what hurt, to feel without turning away. Anyone can pretend to be okay, but few can sit in the storm and say, "I'm not running anymore." That's the beginning of real power, not the kind they show in movies, loud, violent, control, but the quiet power of someone who knows themselves deeply, someone who no longer chases validation or flees from loneliness, because they've made peace with who they are, shadow and all. So here's your question. What part of you are you still hiding? And what would happen if you offered it your presence instead of your rejection? Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want. No rules, no limits, no pain. But that's not freedom. That's just reaction dressed up as choice. Real freedom, it's stillness. It's being in the chaos and not becoming it. It's hearing the voice of doubt and choosing not to obey it. It's facing rejection and realizing it does not define you. Jung understood this. He saw that the chains we carry are rarely visible. They live in our beliefs, our habits, our need to be liked, our fear of being alone. You think you're making free choices, but often You're just playing out old scripts. Scripts written by fear, not by truth. But what happens when you pause? When you stop trying to fix yourself, impress others, or outrun your discomfort? At first, there's silence, then maybe restlessness, and then something unexpected. Clarity. You begin to hear your real voice, the one that's been buried under noise for years. And that voice doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It simply knows. That's where power lives, not in proving yourself, but in no longer needing to. When you stop reacting, you start choosing. That is what Jung meant by individuation. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to yourself. So next time you feel the urge to escape, pause, breathe, and ask, is this reaction mine or something I've inherited? Because only then can you begin to live from truth, not trauma. There's a paradox that Jung often returned to. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Most people run from their wounds. They hide them, deny them, numb them, because the pain feels like a threat, a sign of weakness. But here's the truth. Your wound is not your enemy. It's your invitation. That ache in your chest, that old memory you wish would just disappear, it's not there to punish you. It's there to wake you up. You see, healing doesn't come from covering up the scar. It comes from understanding it. When you finally sit with your pain, not as a victim, but as a witness, something begins to shift. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to show me? The moment you do that, you reclaim your power. Because now, instead of being at the mercy of the wound, you're in relationship with it. And in that relationship, light begins to enter. Not the blinding kind that demands perfection, but the gentle kind that brings awareness. It doesn't mean the pain vanishes. It means you're no longer defined by it. It means your story expands, from survival to meaning, from reaction to growth. This is the secret Jung pointed to over and over again. The thing you're most afraid to face often holds the key to your transformation. So when life opens the door to that dark room, don't turn away, step inside, bring a light, and watch what grows. You are not who they told you to be somewhere along the way. You started believing a story about yourself. Maybe it came from a parent who didn't see you, a teacher who underestimated you, a friend who betrayed you, a society that measured your worth by impossible standards. And over time, that story hardened. It became the voice in your head. You're not enough. You're too much. You'll never change. But here's what Jung understood, and what few people are brave enough to admit. Most of us are living in identities we didn't choose. Masks we were handed as children, roles we were told to play, scripts we memorized just to survive. But survival isn't the same as living. So let me ask you something. Who were you before the world told you who to be? Before you shrank yourself to fit in? Before you apologized for your feelings? Before you learned to hide your truth just to be loved? That version of you, the one beneath the performance, is still here. Buried, perhaps. Bruised, yes, but not broken. And if you can begin to question the false self, the persona you've been wearing out of habit, you can start to remember who you really are. Not the idea of you, not the expectations others placed on you, but the actual you. That's the power of individuation, Jung's word for the journey back to wholeness. It doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means becoming who you were before the world forgot. Do you know where your real power lives? Not in your perfection, not in your control, not in your ability to avoid pain. Your true strength is hidden in the places you've been taught to run from. Your anger, your sadness, your fear, your shame. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of yourself you were told were unacceptable, so you buried them. But what's buried isn't gone. It waits. It speaks in your nightmares. It leaks into your relationships. It sabotages your peace from the inside out. And yet, This shadow is not your enemy, it's your map, because within every rejected part of you is a piece of your truth, a piece of your fire, a piece of your story that never got to be told. You want to be free, you want to be whole, then you must walk into the darkness, not to destroy it, but to reclaim what you left behind, to feel what you never felt, to say what you were never allowed to say, to become the person you were always meant to be. That's not weakness, that's not failure, that's power, the armor that no longer serves you. Once, you needed to protect yourself. Maybe you were too young to fight, too vulnerable to speak, too alone to be seen. So, you built armor. You became the pleaser, the achiever, the silent one, the one who always smiled, even when it hurt. That armor saved you. It kept you safe in places that were not safe. It helped you survive when love was conditional, when pain was constant, when the world didn't make space for your truth. But now, that same armor is suffocating you. It stops you from feeling deeply. It keeps you distant from the people you love. It whispers that if they saw the real you, they'd leave. So you perform. You overthink. You control. You hide. But you weren't meant to live behind a mask. The person you became to survive is not the person you need to be to thrive. And I know, taking off the armor feels like dying, because in some ways, it is. But what dies is the illusion. What remains is you, raw, real, free. The power of being misunderstood. Not everyone will understand your healing. Some will miss the old version of you, the one who stayed quiet, the one who tolerated too much, the one who didn't ask for more. Your growth will feel like loss to those who benefited from your silence. They might call you distant, selfish, cold. They'll say, "You've changed," and they'll be right. You did. You stopped betraying yourself just to make others comfortable. You started saying no. You started resting. You started listening to the voice inside, not the noise outside. And for some, that will be too much. For some, that will be the end. But here's the truth. Your healing is not a group project. Not everyone gets a vote. Not everyone will come with you. And that's okay. Let them misunderstand you. Let them judge you. Let them leave. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. Becoming the anchor you never had at some point, you realize no one is coming to rescue you. Not the partner, not the parent, not the friend who always disappears when things get hard. It's a painful truth. But within that pain, there's a strange kind of freedom. Because when you stop waiting to be saved, you begin learning how to save yourself. You become the anchor you once begged others to be. You hold yourself through the storms. You comfort the child within. You wipe your own tears and whisper, "I've got you." This is not loneliness. This is liberation. You're no longer at the mercy of moods, or approval, or abandonment. You found a home inside your own skin, and no one can take that from you. The power of inner stillness. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't prove. It doesn't demand to be seen. It's quiet, still, rooted. You feel it when you sit in silence and no longer run from yourself. When your heart races, but you stay. When old pain rises, but you don't flinch. This is the strength of someone who has returned to themselves. Someone who no longer fears the mirror or the memories. You stop needing to win arguments, to prove your worth, to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you, because you understand yourself now, and that is enough. This is where your healing becomes wisdom, where your scars are no longer shameful, but sacred, where every time you were broken becomes proof that you can rebuild. The return to wholeness. You have spent so long surviving, performing, pleasing, protecting yourself from pain by becoming who others needed you to be. But the truth is, you were never broken, just buried. Buried under the weight of expectation, under the fear of rejection, under the silence you learned to keep because your truth felt unsafe. Yet even beneath all that, your essence remained untouched. Carl Jung once said, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." And you are a living paradox, wounded yet whole, afraid yet courageous, lost yet always returning. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be real, to meet your shadows, not with fear, but with presence, to hold the child you once were and whisper, "You don't have to hide anymore," to walk into the world not armored, but rooted, not with your fists up, but with your heart open. This is power, not control, but clarity, not dominance, but depth, not hardness, but wholeness. If these words found you, they weren't an accident. Part of you already knows, the time for hiding is over, the time for shrinking is done. So let this be your quiet revolution, not loud, not flashy, but sacred, certain, yours. Remember, the people who tried to break you never truly saw you, but now you do. And when you see yourself fully, no one else gets to define your worth again. Welcome back to you.